Hello, everybody. Welcome to Books by Adrian. I don't know how well that played. I feel like there might have been some lag in it. I'm not sure.
I know, it looked awesome.
Great. That's a good sign. Welcome to Books by Adrian. I'm Adrian, and my guest today on Livestream Sunday is Miss Stephanie Straface. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello, how are you?
Chilling. How are you?
Doing good.
Awesome. For everybody new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. You know what you're doing. It's YouTube. Follow the rules. Be cool. Cheers. Stephanie is with us today to talk about the very real world, already getting tongue-tied, and the cultures in it, and all the things that make all of our different regions different, because we're going to draw upon her knowledge from having lived in many different places to use in our world building. Stephanie, you work for the State Department. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I work for the State Department. I've been there for about going on my 8th year now. I work in what's called the Foreign Service. So another term for that is diplomat. That's a very fancy term that probably portrays some sort of dinner reception and, secret agent stuff in your mind, but that's not at all as glamorous as it really is.
First thing that comes to mind is lethal weapon, diplomatic immunity.
Exactly. So I don't often go around and say, hey, I'm a diplomat. I'm a Foreign Service officer, so I work at embassies and consulates overseas, representing the United States interest. I'm currently an Assistant Public Affairs Officer, so that means I'm working with cultural portfolios, doing people-to-people ties. We work with grants for civil society, right now in Kazakhstan. So do a lot of moving around.
And on the topic of a lot of moving around, how many different countries have you lived in during your time working with the State Department?
So my first time traveling with the State Department, so before that I did study abroad in Croatia. My first overseas was in Vilnius, Lithuania, also working in public affairs. From there I went to Stockholm, Sweden, working as a consular officer. They're the ones that do visas and passports. I did the same thing in Kabul, Afghanistan, and did a stint back in the United States for a year. I worked in what was called the Operations Center. So it's like a 360 view of the world. It's a shift work 24/7, keeping an eye on anything that could be going on in the world, like at any time. So if something happens and it's middle of the night in the States, you wake up the right people and say, hey, something happened. Now I'm working as an Assistant Public Affairs Officer in Almaty, Kazakhstan. This is a consulate, not an embassy, but it's the only consulate in all of Central Asia.
Well, so by my count, that's 4 different countries. If we throw in the United States of America, that's 5.
What did I say?
Right?
So Croatia, Lithuania, Sweden, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, United States.
6. I missed one. Okay. So 6 different countries. So what we're doing here today is we're going to play a little game of sorts. For those of you who don't know, and that's most of you, Stephanie and I go way, way back. We used to work together at the House of Blues in Orlando, and we've been friends for how many years now? It's got to be at least...
I was just trying to do the math in my head, like 12 years?
I was going to say it's at least a decade.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 12 sounds about right. Wow.
I left Orlando in 2011, and I worked at House of Blues for 2 years before that, so I'm going to say 12.
That makes sense.
That's crazy.
That's bananas. So, it was my goal to make this a fun kind of game sort of situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the basics of world building as an author would have to research, in order to create a world. We're going to have to learn about geography and all these different aspects of the real world. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the topics, and I'm just going to ask Stephanie here some just sort of prompting questions and let her roll with some stories from her times abroad. And hopefully that will help us to come up with some cool stories. We're gonna steal all your stories, Stephanie. I wanted to take a second to mention that the Flash Fiction musical score contest did meet its deadline on the 15th, a few days ago, but I haven't yet taken down the submit button. I have a few entries. I want a couple more, and there's still a good 2 weeks, maybe less, before I have to give the winner to the musician. So I want to fit in a couple last minute entries. So if you have a piece of Flash Fiction, it doesn't have to be original just for this one. It could be pre-written. Just send me something, submit something, 800 words or less. The winner of the contest with the most emotional story is going to have that turned into an audiobook reading, which is going to get sent to a musician who is going to score it live on our show. And then we're going to apply the score to a final video that I put up on the website, on the channel. And that's the grand prize for the winner. So you guys have a couple more days. I'm going to say until the 22nd. So the 22nd to put in a last minute entry. You can go to the website here. I'll show you real quick. You go to booksbyadrian.com. You scroll down just a little bit, and you have this really awesome outer space scene here. If you scroll down to the bottom of that, there's a submit button. Just hit that bad boy. Fills in everything for you. And all you got to do is attach your file. All right, that's done. That's done. Housekeeping is over with. Stephanie, you ready?
800 words. I feel like that would be hard to write. Like, well, I feel like I would want to write more than that. I know, that's the hard part.
Well, this is like a new thing that's been happening on AuthorTube. I don't know if, I'm sure it existed in some way before, but I've always contextualized it from this thing from AuthorTube, where we write Flash Fiction pieces, little tiny short stories, sometimes as short as 300 words. It's a scene sometimes, It's okay. It's just an entire story in a really compressed down little moment. And it can be anywhere, and it can be anything, and it's just like a really cool way to flex your muscles, your writing muscles. Normally these contests are for short stories, but short stories can actually be quite long by comparison. And if you're doing a musical score, it'd be better if it's something that you could read in 5 minutes. So, Flash Fiction.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not the only one getting schooled today. I'm going to school you too.
Yeah, no, I'm learning a lot.
All right. So, we're going to start with geography. I already gave you this example before the show. I didn't let you answer. Here we go. Let me get... but I wanted to let everybody know the source of this little list. I basically looked up the basics of world building, and it led me to this particular article written on this particular blog, which was actually quite good. And for beginners of world building in general, it's a great place to start. Keep going from here with your research. This is just something I'm using for the purposes of this game. Okay. So, there are man-made boundaries and there are geographical boundaries to our countries in many different ways. So, in all the places that you've lived, when we bring up the topic of geographical boundaries, what particular place sticks out to you as having something unique?
So yeah, you did ask this question before, and so I had like 5 minutes to think about it. I would go with Stockholm because Stockholm is actually an archipelago, so it's like many different islands, and each one is like known for something. Like there's the island that has a little amusement park on it and a zoo. There's the island that has, the embassy and like all the big government buildings. There's the palace because it's still like a representational monarchy. Then there's like the cool, young hipster where all the clubs are, all the good restaurants kind of island. So when I think of geographical boundaries, I think of just like hopping from island to island as I would go to work or come home. And that to me was like a really cool feeling. You could always just pop from one place to the next and have a totally different feeling in the same city.
That's awesome. That reminds me a little bit in A Song of Ice and Fire. The is it Old Town or no? Bravos.
Bravos, yeah. I know what you mean.
Bravos is like a series of little islands like that that are all, but it's all like it's almost like medieval Manhattan, where it's like broken up into chunks. There's nothing geographical to the island. It's just like a structure that has like become more than the island used to be, and it's just like a series of islands. That's so cool, a series of islands, and then each one is known for something else.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you said Old Town because one of the islands is named Old Town.
There's always an Old Town.
There's always an Old Town. It was one of my favorite places to go, though, and in Swedish it's Gamlastan, and there was so Sweden holds the Nobel Peace Prize, and so there's a Nobel Museum, and there's like this big fountain in the middle of Gamlastan where there was a massacre that took place, and right across there's like the museum, the fountain, and then right across from it is this old apothecary that they turned into a bar, and it's called Farmarium. And it was the coolest bar because you go in there and they would make your drinks as if they were making like potions. So you'd get your drink and it would come out with like smoke coming out of it, or all the little shelves behind them were those tiny little wooden shelves like in old apothecaries. It was really cool.
Little vials and stuff. Like
exactly.
Back there. That's
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, give it that feel.
Oh man. Dude, I knew this was a good idea. I knew this was going to be a good idea. All right. I like that. That's awesome. How long did you live there?
About a year and a half. A little over a year and a half.
Right on. All right. In all the places that you've lived, when you think about something unique involving the local source of water or the nearest body of water, what do you got?
Man, I don't want to say Sweden again, but it's kind of hard when you live on a bunch of islands.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kazakhstan's landlocked, and Croatia, the split is famous. I mean, it was like a really well-kept secret in Europe, I think, for a long time. And there's a pretty rough history in the former Yugoslavia, but Split in Croatia is just this gorgeous, rocky cliff beach, like I'm kind of thinking of Greece in my head, but it's like that, and it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And I was sick the day that we went, so that's saying a lot, because I had like an ear infection or something. I was just feeling like crap, and it was overcast. And I just ended up getting like 16 cappuccinos because that's the best thing that you can do when you're sick. And I sat there reading my book, just looking out over this cliff into the water, and it actually kind of looks like that.
Huh. Oh yeah.
That's Japan, but yeah. Gorgeous.
So yeah, that's Croatia.
That was Croatia.
See, I would not, having never been there, I would not have expected that. of Croatia. That sounds beautiful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the secret's out now. Everybody wants to go to Croatia.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny because I think I saw like a travel ad for Croatia for the first time in my life, like within the last year or so. And I just remember, like, it's because I knew that you lived there, and I remember it sticking out to me, like, huh, that's weird. An ad for traveling to Croatia.
There's got to be a word for this, right? Where somebody brings something up and then you see it everywhere after
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
if you Googled it, there's a term for that.
All right, let's see. Okay, natural features, something again that is not man-made, something natural that sticks out as identifying about one of these places that you've lived.
Mountains, for sure.
Mountains.
So, remind me, did you grow up in Florida or you moved there later in your life?
I moved there at age 13. Before that, I was in Buffalo, New York.
Okay, I know nothing about Buffalo except this.
Well, Buffalo it has all 4 seasons, and it takes all 4 seasons to their extreme. Like the summers are the worst, the winters are the worst. Like it's just, but it's Buffalo is a big city with the heart of a small town, where everybody knows that we all suffer the same 3 or 4 months every year, like through the winter. So we're all kind of like solid and, you know, like in the same boat. We're all nice to each other. But it's also like a New York city. You know what I mean? Like it's a city in New York State. And there's something about cities in New York State that is also kind of, you know, suck, you know?
Yeah, I get it. My husband's from New York too, so
There you go.
I feel it. I go there often.
Yeah.
But for me, so I was born and raised in Florida, and I didn't leave Florida until I was like 20 years old. So mountains were never something. Yeah. Oh, I always tell people my biggest culture shock was moving from Florida to Jersey, even to this day. But mountains were something I never saw growing up. I saw big hills, but I never saw mountains. And so when
Florida's flat.
Super flat.
Yeah.
And I love beaches. You know, I love Florida. But yeah, when I moved to Kabul, Afghanistan, I remember flying over the mountains. And then we fly into an airport and then we take a helicopter to get to where we have to go. And it was like, I was like, oh my God, this is so gorgeous. Yeah, I was like, I cannot believe this. And I'm so lucky now because in Almaty, I can look out my window and see the mountains here too. And it's just like those snow-capped mountains. Like, there's nothing like seeing it, you know? And good luck people trying to write that into a story because there's just, I've read about plenty of mountains, just like seeing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely the coolest natural.
You know, one of the things that people talk about the most when they talk about the Lord of the Rings movies is the scenery, especially the mountains, like the way that they shot those, you know, natural landscapes in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Now, I'm originally, before Buffalo, I'm from Puerto Rico. And, you know, we're a jungle island. You know, we're jungle people. And most of the island is jungle mountains. So enormous mountains covered from top to bottom in green. You know, you never see the rock. It's just all green, you know? It's like watching Lost. Something like that. So one of the things that I've always wanted is to see real, you know, Rocky Mountains, real snow-capped mountains, you know? Because it's just something completely different about them. And I know that, like, seeing them on TV, seeing pictures of them, whatever, is not doing them justice. So, like, I really want to take a family trip up to Colorado or something and just, like, spend some time up in the mountains.
That would be gorgeous. Take me with you.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I've seen those green, this is going to be really terrible of a diplomat to say, but I don't know if they were mountains. But my husband and I, we went to Haiti for our honeymoon, and same, it was like those, I hope they were mountains, maybe they were just big hills, but just green.
Yeah.
Just bright green, and it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Haiti is a gorgeous country.
That whole Caribbean area is very similar. Those islands are all geographically very similar. So yeah, it's probably a lot like that. They probably were mountains. And, they're finding the same thing in the jungles in the Amazon, where they think they're green covered mountains, but what they really are like pyramids that the Mayans built so long ago. And now they're finding them. There's like 12 of them in there at least. It's bananas. All right. Next up is climate. Now I feel like I can guess your answer. But climate-wise, which country sticks out to you as the most impactful?
Well, I mean, Sweden was definitely cold, obviously. It's not as cold as you would think it is in Stockholm because it's further south in Sweden than, the top that actually hits the Arctic Circle. But I have to say, again, the thing that shocked me the most is air quality. And if this counts as climate, which I'm going to throw it in there, is air quality. Like in Kabul and here in Almaty, the air quality is so terrible in the winter. Like you can chew the air. It's like grit, and sometimes you can smell like trash being burned, or like I can just go outside and I know if the air is bad just by smelling it. Yeah. And that's not something I was ever used to before. And so, I mean, clearly we take a very big stance on climate change now, but it's dangerous, and so every time that we are ready to like say goodbye to our post and then we have to go to another post, we only stay in one place for anywhere between 1 and 3 years. So when it's time to go to the next place, now I have a young kid and I was like, well, I would like to go somewhere that has clean air quality. And I was shocked at how few options there were that had clean air quality. So, it's, I guess, one of those things that you kind of have to bend a little on when you do a lot of traveling for work. But yeah, I think that's the biggest shocker to me is like being able to eat the air.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wow. All of this is just bringing story references up in my brain. I'm back to Lord of the Rings and Mordor and how the very air you breathe is a poisonous fume.
Yeah. That's, I mean, you're pretty right. The lifespan in these places is so much lower than, Florida, I bet, because the air quality. I mean, people develop allergies, asthma, bronchitis, like annual bronchitis, can turn into pneumonia. I mean, can you imagine COVID in bad air quality?
Yeah.
I'm bringing us down. Bring us back up.
Yeah. We gotta switch it over. Although the next one might not be any better. Like, let's find out. So we're gonna shift over to cultures and societies. Power structures. What place that you have lived in sticks out for its power structure?
Wow, what a great question.
And I'm differentiating between power structure and government.
All right, elaborate then.
Well, power structure being more, societies rarely exist outside of a hierarchy of power. Government plays a role in this, certainly. But there's also the rules of privilege and prejudice and suppression and all these other factors that play into the power structure of a place. Does that make sense? Where I'm going?
Yeah.
And you don't have to get too in deep, because I know that your hands are a little tied, but whatever you got.
No, I do think it's interesting. I think it's interesting because I have seen and lived in so many different kinds of places, right? I mean, the United States, I don't think I need to explain to your audience, the three branches of government, yada, yada.
I hope not.
I hope not. Y'all, there's a really great video. It's called I'm Just a Bill. You can watch it. But, from there, going to Sweden, hey, I'm just helping. So Sweden, as I said, it's still got its monarchy, and that's very interesting because the tax actually pays for the monarchy, which is this figurehead system, right? I mean, of course, they're the ones that are going to, in my time, shaking hands with Obama, but they're really going to talk to the prime minister. And that's how they're going to get things done on a foreign, friendship basis, get treaties and everything. Fast forward to Afghanistan, this is a country that's coming out of years of terrorism and war, and you've still got the power struggle between the Afghan government and the Taliban. And I won't get into the recent news about the United States pulling out, but that was really interesting to watch too, because you have two entities that are claiming their legitimacy here, and watching them how they're fighting it out and what their arguments are. Really interesting to watch that play out. And I'm sure that resonates a lot with storytelling, because there is always the good and the bad, the dark side and the light, Harry Potter and Voldemort, so there's always going to be that. And then here in Almaty, so Kazakhstan used to be part of the Soviet Union, and in 1991, when that disbanded, they became independent. The United States was actually the first country to recognize Kazakhstan as an independent country. So we're celebrating 30 years of not only their independence, but our friendship this year. And until 2019, they had the same president, President Nazarbayev. And he was the president from 1991 until 2019. And then exactly. So just recently there was that change of power. So it's really interesting also to see a country that had the same leader for such a long time, very little, but also a lot as that changes in 20 years, or 30 years. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question. I'm just thinking it's really interesting that I've never lived in a country that has exactly the same type of government. Yeah,
that's exactly what I want to know about. That's so interesting. Well, the next one was government anyway, so it kind of ties into each other very nicely with two birds, one stone. There's an author in our chat right now. I'm going to throw up what he was talking about while you were talking, because he's a soldier, and his weirdest experience power structure was also, was that Peck River?
I think that's Pesh. I think he's talking about Peshawar
Valley in Afghanistan, and he elaborates there were Taliban, organized crime running gems and minerals to Chapdara, and as well as the local tribal influences in each of the valleys. So all these things sort of contributing to the power structure, creating a unique power structure in that place. Very interesting. Very interesting. Which just goes to show that there's so much room to play when writing and world building, in making in a single world multiple types of power structures from one country to the other. Because one of my biggest nitpicks about Star Wars, and I love Star Wars, but one of my biggest nitpicks is how every planet is one thing. There's a jungle planet, and the whole planet is a giant jungle. That makes no sense. And then there's a desert planet. The entire planet is a desert. It's like, okay, well, maybe. But there would still be different countries and cultures in it. Like, there needs to be, like, all right, so anyway.
I actually, like, never thought about that until you just said it. You're absolutely right. Like, how come?
It's just like a shorthand that George Lucas was doing. It's like, okay, so when we go to this planet, we're going to have one location that we can shoot in, and it's going to be a jungle location. So the whole planet has to be a jungle planet. I'm like, no, yeah, like you landed in a jungle. Like, what if there's a mountain like over there? Like, it's fine. You don't have to. Anyway.
Talk about the Goldilocks zone.
Right. Uh-oh.
I had a Star Wars themed wedding, all right, and our tables were named after the planets. But yeah, still haven't thought about that.
There you go. I just shattered your whole world.
I know. I mean, if we're gonna stay, we're gonna stay on Star Wars. All right, we're gonna do exactly the opposite that you asked. I can see a desert planet. It's like Mars, right? And I can see a frozen planet.
Sure. Or a water planet. Like I can see that. But there would still be varying, like, areas.
Huge plot hole.
Yeah. Come on, man. All right. Next up is religion. What country? Because I know that even within a country, even within a city, there are often many religions represented. However, there tends to usually be a base religion for any given area. So which one sticks out to you as maybe something you didn't expect or something like that?
Yeah, for sure. So my family on my mom's side is Catholic, but I never did like the communion and all that. I actually ended up going like to Baptist church because I loved singing and dancing and they were fun.
The music's better.
Yeah, now I have Anyways, so no going to Sweden, no dog in the fight really. Kind of like be a good person. And so I went to Sweden and I heard, that they're mostly Catholic. But come to find out, the funniest thing I ever heard there was, we're only Catholic when you have to get hatched, matched, or dispatched. Right? But what I loved about it is, so in this job, right? That's like my favorite saying ever now.
I love it.
Yeah, I only go to church when I have to get hatched, matched, or dispatched. And it was kind of great though, because in this job we get both local holidays and our American holidays off. So like 4th of July we have off, but we also have off the local holidays. And in Sweden they have all the Catholic holidays, like Epiphany Day and Boxer Day and all these days. So yeah, if you worked like a full month without a day off, it was a bad month. You were like, what? Where's my days off? And then, of course, in Afghanistan, Islam was the major religion. And, you heard the call to prayer in the morning, which is beautiful. I still love, sometimes I just listen to it on my iPod because I just think it's a beautiful, symbol.
Probably brings you back to that place, too.
Yeah, it does, in a way. When I was hearing it there, it was really far off. So it was just like echoes of it. Which is also, it had its own beauty to it. It's much different than hearing it like right in your ear.
That's something that sets up like an ambiance to the city. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
The whole community has like this sort of like air about it as the sounds are reverberating through the day. Like sometimes it's a clock tower with bells. Like whatever it is, it creates like the music of the city. The sound.
Absolutely. I mean, so my husband's a veteran, and we end up watching all kinds of like war and military movies, and I feel like every single one that has taken place in the last 30 years, like where they are because they're walking through the desert and you hear the call to prayer.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I know that they're probably in Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They're somewhere.
Even though it was shot in New Mexico. But
right, exactly. So, but I respected that. You know, women wore hijab. They prayed their 5 times a day. They fasted during Ramadan. They, you know, which is actually going on right now. And it was beautiful, beautiful religion, beautiful people. Afghans are just really, really kind. But that's probably another question for another time. And then here in Kazakhstan, it's a Muslim majority country, but it's not like that. You don't see women walking around with hijab very often. They are here, just like them in the States. But it's not every woman. There's, you know, at least the folks that I work with, it's not 5 prayers a day. Those who are practicing, they do fast during Ramadan. They, you know, don't drink alcohol. And follow those sorts of rules, but it's a very different kind of Islam than I'd seen before. So that was even more eye-opening. You know, like every religion is not one thing, and you know, don't pigeonhole a religion.
Yeah, that's something that I always struggled with growing up, because I grew up in a Christian family, and we predominantly went to Pentecostal churches, and I was fairly ignorant about the other denominations of Christianity, let alone other religions in general. But when, you know, I got to my teens and, you know, I had a little more freedom to go out with friends and, you know, start dating, and then girlfriend goes to a different church or whatever, you start to like see all these differences in how all these Christians worship differently and, you know, read the Bible differently and all that stuff. And those little differences within the umbrella, like all underneath this major umbrella. So like what you're talking about, where there's like a particular region with a particular religion that's dominant there, there's still like all these subtle differences from one like sect to another.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Kazakhstan is like the strangest place I've ever had to explain to anybody else. If you didn't already know about Kazakhstan, then, you know, I tell people like, okay, so they have Asian features. They speak Russian. They practice Islam. You know, and I'm just like, wait, what? Where is this country? It has such a unique and rich history, a sad history too, but, you know, and it's comes from a nomadic people who didn't always speak Russian. You know, they have their own local language of Kazakh. But yeah, I mean, they're really close to what we call the Middle East. They're right underneath Russia. They have a border with China. It's a really interesting place. This is definitely the most unique place I've ever lived.
Are both languages present together?
Yes. So in the big cities like Almaty and Nur-Sultan is the capital, and it's tied for second, I think, of the coldest city in the entire world, next to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. So I'm very glad I don't live there. But in these 2 cities, it's almost entirely Russian. And the government does a lot of business in Russian, so meetings with them will usually take place in Russian. But since independence, so, you know, when they were under the Soviet rule, it was all Russian. And, you know, without getting too much into the really sad parts of the history, their language was, you know, just almost wiped out. So now, you know, since 1991, there's been a big push to bring the Kazakh language back. So if you go into cities like in West Kazakhstan, you will find cities that only speak Kazakh. Very little Russian speakers there. And then you'll find in the city Kazakh, like ethnically Kazakh people who don't speak Kazakh at all. They only speak Russian. So it's really, really easy or interesting. But as I was saying that, I was thinking Kazakh is not easy. It's a Turkish language. So it sounds almost Arabic, Turkish, you know, that kind of like the third, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Russian just sounds like really angry.
Yeah. It's kind of like that in Puerto Rico because we're a U.S. territory. So Spanish is our primary language, but our money is American dollars with English writing on it, and we teach English in the schools, and you can get English TV if you are paying for cable or whatever. So it's kind of interesting how one region can have both like that, and like dominant areas for each.
Well, I mean, then what do you end up with? You end up with Spanglish, right?
Yeah.
And then
exactly
you have
what you end up with.
So, like I love Latin American music and I love Puerto Rican music, Cuban music. So when I listen to that, like I hear so much Spanglish. Part of it is in Spanish, part of it is in English.
Yeah.
Sometimes both languages are in the same sentence.
Yeah.
You'll get that here. I'll hear people who are speaking Kazakh, like translating for me into Kazakh, but then you just hear some Russian words just dropped in there randomly. Yeah. And I pick up on those because I know a little bit of Russian, but I'm just like, oh, we were, okay. Yeah, maybe there's not a word for that. I don't know.
That's awesome. See, I need to throw that into my stories. That makes so much sense. And it never, even being from Puerto Rico, it never occurred to me, the whole Spanish.
Well, getting away from real world building, it makes me think of Firefly. You know, how they have the different languages.
All their curse words were Chinese.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Right on. Art and entertainment. This is the last one for cultures and societies. Art and entertainment. What place sticks out to you as the spot for art and entertainment?
I mean, that's a tough one. So what I think a lot of people don't know about Sweden is that one of their biggest exports to the United States is music. There's a lot of, well, I think you'll remember Avicii, who passed away, unfortunately, but he was really big in the States. He's Swedish. There's a lot of music producers. There's also a film, too. There's a lot of, like, graphic, the people who do the CGI, who are Swedish, and they export, that skill to American films. People who write music that are Swedish, and then they sell that to American artists, and so you don't know that you're listening to a song that was written by a Swede. So music, and then, if barring the silly thing that's on Netflix right now, Eurovision is that's where ABBA was born. And it is the biggest thing in Sweden. I mean, well, in all of Europe, but Swedes really, really love Eurovision. And that's a musical competition. And so, yeah, I mean, when I think of arts and entertainment, when I think of entertainment and arts of Sweden, I think music and a little bit of film. When I think of Afghanistan, I think of carpets and jewelry, because you can get a carpet and have it appraised in the States for thousands of dollars. I've seen carpets woven with real gold. They have the most gorgeous carpets, and jewels are there naturally, and so you can buy jewelry there. I had my mom had a ring made for her that mimicked a ring that I lost. I lost it, but I lost her ring.
Don't tell her to watch this.
Well, she knows I lost it. But yeah, so I had a jeweler in Afghanistan make a replica of it for her. And it wasn't that pricey, because things were so just naturally found there. Wow. And here I also have to say film. So the 48-hour film race is one of our biggest storytelling projects that we work on at the embassy and the consulate here in Kazakhstan. And it's just that you have 48 hours to make a film, and it's no longer than 4 minutes, hundreds of entries every year. And the talent for filmmakers in Kazakhstan is so unfortunately untapped. There's a lot of potential here that's untapped. So we're working really hard to get them working with American filmmakers and building those connections and networks, because when you share culture, that's really how we're going to bring people together. We can sign all the treaties we want in the world, but it's when you know somebody else that comes from that culture. You know, if you know people who are like Islamophobic, but then you have a really good friend who's Muslim, you're not going to be Islamophobic because you have that inner understanding, that mutual understanding of that person. And this goes for all sorts of things. If you're like anti-LGBT, but then your brother comes out as gay, then you're like, oh crap, how can I do that? I love him. You know, so if you just bring people together, and you can do that through arts and entertainment so much easier than you can at the table with secretaries of state and they're arguing over scarcity of water. But you can always bring like a banjo and a dombra together and make really cool music.
That's beautifully said.
Thanks.
That's awesome. And having begun that whole thing with the thing about the carpets that was Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
The idea that they're in such abundance there, but you can take them, bring them to the States, and they're worth a fortune. That's a nice little nugget that I'm taking away from here for my world building. You know, even though you're in a particular place, you can have things from other places in your world that are rare or special or imported or whatever it is, and build your world without ever having to leave the location of your story. Like you can have all these outside things present to hint to the larger
Say where
world.
you've been. Yeah.
Yeah. In the prologue to my novel, there's a little tree. I based it off the idea of a bonsai tree, you know, in a pot, a little windy trunk. But the idea that it's from this place that nobody's been to in like 300 years, and like how is it still alive, and it just like hints at this larger thing. So I feel that. But the idea that art can bring these countries together in a way that the governments could never hope to do the same. You know what I'm saying? Like because like I avoided TikTok for a very long time because I'm an old
still
man.
avoiding TikTok.
See, I'm an old man with kids. I don't need to go on the app that all young people are dancing around on. Like that's not something I need in my life. So I'm not. I wasn't on there. But like everything else, like Twitter, like Instagram, it's grown into like this uncontrollable thing. And so I finally like dove into it, and I fell down like rabbit holes of these very interesting people who are sharing their very unique and interesting expertises. You know, there's a woman I follow who her entire channel on TikTok is folding clothes. She's like the expert at folding anything. Like people are throwing up like challenges for her, and she'll like show you step by step how to perfectly fold this thing into like and she shows us her drawers and how everything is meticulously folded and put in the, and I'm just like, this is my gold right now. This is my bread and butter. This is what I need. I need people to like show me this stuff. So I bring it up because one of the features on TikTok is this thing called duets, right? Where somebody puts up a video, somebody else then takes that video and puts it side by side with their own, and whatever's going on in the first video, they're adding their content from the second one, and it's happening simultaneously. And this is amazing because musicians will use it to collaborate with people that they would never in a million years meet in person. So one guy is on a banjo and he plays a thing on a banjo, and he's over in, you know, Louisiana or wherever. And then somebody in China duets with him and does, you know, adds their instrument, and somebody from India duets with them and adds their, and before you know it, you have world music from people who have never met and did not like coordinate this. Like each one was just like, oh, I have an idea what to add, and they'll add something, and it just continues to grow. It's this organic thing that just, again, brings people together. It's amazing. I love it.
We've been doing that for years. I mean, there's so many silver linings to this pandemic that I think deserve their, they deserve their role to be talked about.
I agree.
And this, bringing people together is definitely one of them. To see, what we do as public affairs officers is just that, like trying to bring people together through arts and culture and grants and, thought leaders and influencers, and bringing this, guy who went viral together with this guy who went viral. That's what we want to do. And COVID has made it so much easier only because everybody adapted like overnight to this virtual world. And this is what you get. You get art. I mean, I saw, gosh, it was like the beginning of COVID, but I loved it. I saved it somewhere. But yeah, it was like when disaster hits, when people are sick, when you are alone and isolated and you don't know what to do, you're uncertain, what still survives? Music, film, writing. People are still being creative. Yeah. So, culture and art is just something that's never going to die, and it's always going to be something that keeps us together. That's the power of storytelling. We've been telling stories since before we could even speak to each other. We've been immortalizing like great battles on cave walls before we can even say buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, the number of books that were written in 2020, like if you look at the number of publications towards the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, it's bananas. Like how it shot up. Because like all of a sudden everybody had time.
Yeah.
No distractions. No excuses.
I got my yoga teacher certification.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. But I'm like, I was sick of sitting around and doing nothing and not being able to go anywhere, do anything. So, again, another thing I could do virtually.
That's awesome. Let's move on to history.
Okay.
All right. So I have two for these, and neither one of them seems very fun. Number one is power shifts. You've touched on this, especially in the with the president that was there for how many years? From 91?
91 to 2019. Yeah, so almost 30 years, like 28 years.
That's bananas. And that was a president. That wasn't a king.
No, that was president. Yeah.
That's all right. So that's significant. That's any other place power shift wise that sticks out. That one seems to me like the go-to.
It is the go-to, and it happened just before I came out. So I knew I was coming to Almaty for about 2 years before I actually got here. I spent a year in Russian before coming out here. And it was like while I was in my Russian class, and I remember the kid that was sitting next to me, he's like, "Did you hear that Nazarbayev gave up power?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, all right." Good one,
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, he's stepping down." I was like, "What?" BBC, tell me more. And he's just he's still in government, and he's definitely still, making some decisions and providing his guidance to the new president. But that's pretty nuts. And he did so by his own choice. It wasn't a coup. It wasn't, some violent transition of power. It was, and I won't get too far into like that and everything, but that was probably the craziest. And although again, I wasn't there for, I was a very wee one when the Taliban was crushed, but like from when they had power of Afghanistan, but still something that battle of power is still going on right now, So, and then I guess like, the unfortunate raise of nationalism that's just kind of happened like all over the world, it seems like. I mean, it even happened in the States. Just, people saying like, this is mine. And I could see that a little bit in Sweden when I was there. There was this political party that I'm just never going to remember the name of. I think it was like Sweden's Democrats, but I don't want to be wrong and then somebody see this. But so don't quote me. But they had their foundations basically. Yeah, right. Dear King of Sweden. I'm doing this because obviously you'd be texting.
My bad.
But yeah, they had their roots in like kind of like a neo-Nazi party, and it was very nationalist. And they had like this saying, like, when the last Swede leaves Sweden, don't forget to turn out the lights, because there was just like this massive influx of people leaving Syria, really. And Sweden had, I think still does, like a pretty lenient immigration policy, but they also like open their doors. Like they might as well put like a vacancy sign above Sweden and said like, yeah, we realize that things are really bad there, so we'll take you.
Wow.
Yeah, and so of course people were upset about that, particularly given the number of terrorist attacks that were happening throughout Europe at the time. So even though it wasn't a transition of power, they actually got enough of the vote. So they're a multi-party system. So they have like the Women's Party, the Green Party, this party, the Conservatives, yada yada, which I think is really smart. But they got 13% of the vote, which was enough to get them seats in Parliament, and so that was pretty scary.
So that leads perfectly into the next one, which is traumatic events in a place, because that also has a huge effect on the people and the culture. And hell, even the geography itself is sometimes affected. Which place do you think sticks out as the one most affected by a traumatic event?
I mean, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
100% Afghanistan. I hate like bringing the conversation down because.
Don't worry, I'll bring it back up.
Bring it back up, man.
Let's get in there. No, let's get in there first.
Well, so I gave my staff more time off for funerals than I did for weddings and births.
Damn.
And that always bothered me. There were 2 major attacks while I was there. One was like the 3rd largest bomb that had ever gone off in Kabul. And I remember it, I mean, how could you not? But we thought it was an earthquake because the vibrations came first. And so all of a sudden, like the ballistic windows that are in front of me are just like vibrating, and I'm like, okay, there must be an earthquake. So I'm just going to go ahead, and then at like seconds later, you heard the, and that was insane. I mean, feeling it. People who were outside of buildings were like thrown up against walls. Some of them, hurt themselves and hit their heads and stuff. So that one was pretty bad, but it was actually my second experience with a bomb in Afghanistan, so I wasn't as shaken by that one as I was the first one. In the first one, I was outside, and I heard like, oh, Adrian, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry. I was doing a thing and I goofed up. Go ahead.
No worries.
I'm still here.
You know when they're doing construction and there's like that thing that like hits, that's like getting posts in the ground, it's like bing, bing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I thought I was hearing. It was actually gunshots. And so that's like how ignorant I was. I was like, oh, they're doing construction somewhere. Because clearly they would have that machine digging posts in Kabul somewhere. So it was gunshots, and I didn't realize it actually until somebody next to me started running. And I was like, oh, I guess I should be running.
You should be running.
And yeah, and it was unfortunately, it was a suicide bomber. So like shortly after, it was the military hospital behind, very close by where the embassy was. So we could hear it.
That was the target, the military hospital?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, the Taliban tends to target government facilities because that's who they're at war with, really. I mean, they're at war with.
That's where they can do the most damage.
Yeah, and try and take back over.
That's crazy. All right. Let's
Bring it back up.
Yeah, that's where we're going next. Technology we're going to talk about. There's going to be a couple of like rapid fire ones here. We may have a repeat of the same answer if one place is more technologically advanced than the others, but hopefully there's enough variance here to get us bouncing around. When you think of technologies people use to communicate with each other, what place comes to mind the most? I mean, these days, revolutions are being fought with Twitter. So, like,
I hope those days are over. No comment. So here, actually, Kazakhstan, like everything is done on WhatsApp, and I've always had WhatsApp since years and years ago.
I send pictures and videos to my parents, and that's it.
Really? Yeah. So I never used it as much as. I mean, it's for everything here. I make reservations here. I book appointments here on WhatsApp. I do my work on WhatsApp, which is really annoying because we have these records management rules where I have to like archive it and export it all to myself. And it's like, but everybody uses WhatsApp to do everything. So there's no getting around it. Yeah. Which is also kind of really convenient though, because I know, okay, I don't speak Russian, but I know I can translate it on Google Translate and send it on WhatsApp, and boom, I've got my appointment set up.
Yeah, I mean, when everyone uses that one thing, it just makes it easier for everybody to work together. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Technologies that people use for travel. What place sticks out?
Oh, man, you stumped me.
While you think, I'm going to throw this comment up on the screen, which is from our previous topic. Few writers realize that many munitions are not immediately identifiable and are often confused with regular daily sounds.
So true, Tom.
Every once in a while, I'll hear something and I'll be like, all right, so that could be a car backfiring or somebody's dead right now. Like, it could really go either way.
It still freaks me out, like people can like close a dumpster 2 streets away and I'll jump, and my husband, who's a Marine vet, he will be like, calm down, it's just this. He has a lot more experience with things blowing up than I do.
So as far as technologies for people using to travel, this could be as simple as one place really is all about their train system, or the other place is all about their bus routes or whatever it is. But if there's, an interesting way that they go about it or anything like that.
So I guess I think of public transit. Like here, I drive or I take a taxi almost everywhere. That's just easiest. And there is a metro here, but it doesn't really go to the places that you need it to go to. Yeah, so it moves, and I don't take the buses, so can't speak to that. But this is also the only country I've ever had a car in. So so in Kabul, we didn't leave the compound. And then in Sweden, I used public transportation for everything. Their metro is so awesome. It goes everywhere you need it to go, even like to the far outskirts of things. And I just used it for everything. I used it to get to work. I would take a metro and then a bus, and same thing back. And I would use their trains.
The metro is like a subway.
Oh yeah, the metro. Yeah, so the metro is like a subway. That's so funny because I think of subway, I only think of New York.
Sandwiches. Oh no, okay. Because we have the metro in Buffalo as well. This underground train system. We call it the same thing. But
you call it metro? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. In Sweden, not Sweden, in DC, it's just called the metro. And I think it was just called the metro in Sweden, now that I'm thinking about it. And in London, it's called the underground.
The underground.
The underground.
That's badass.
And then there's like the famous saying, please mind the gap. That's what we say every time they open.
I've seen that in like episodes of Sherlock.
Yeah, people have T-shirts that say that, like, please mind the gap.
Yeah.
And I think they switched it from like a man's voice to a woman's voice, and everybody like freaked out over that.
Yeah, yeah. Because you can take that a couple different ways.
I'm not even gonna go.
Sorry. Let's just power through that.
To have it like a Michael Scott moment. So trains. I would take trains in Sweden a lot. I would rather take a train than I'd rather take a train 100% of the time, all the time though. I just love looking out the window. I love seeing the country. I love sitting in the car, eating, in the dining car. I love sleeping on trains. I like trains.
Yeah, I used to get a lot of reading done on the train, for sure. Technologies used as a source of entertainment. What place sticks out to you?
One more time, sorry, I was reading the comments.
Oh yeah, no worries. Actually, you know what? Let's throw those up real quick because I know that a couple of those are pretty interesting. Kent confirms that he can recognize PKMs and AK-47s and a bunch of others, like just by sound. Yeah. Ken has stories, but he won't tell them. He doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to talk about it. I respect it, but I'm just very curious.
I respect it too.
Yeah, I'm just so curious.
Right about it.
Got a story about that. I'll tell sometime when we're all together. The quote is, "It's coconut season." Dude, what a tease! What a tease! Once you hear it enough, you start to know specifics. Man.
Yeah, that's true. Like now I know that there's like 2 levels of sound to it. There's like when everybody's like, there really is the and the.
That makes sense. Okay, so entertainment technology.
Yes.
Any place in particular come to mind?
Entertainment technology. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I'm thinking.
Sorry if you can hear my kids. I don't know if you can hear them. But
oh, it's totally fine.
Screaming.
That's fine. I did a program the other day actually where I had to introduce my speaker, and the kid, my daughter was just screaming, fighting bedtime the entire time. Yeah. She started in the middle of my little introduction. I was just like, I can't stop, so y'all are just gonna have to listen to my kid scream and fight bedtime. So I learned so much about filmmaking since being here, and it wasn't something I was ever super into until getting here and doing so many programs with film. And then I started trying it out myself, and turns out I really love editing. So I'm doing that a lot more. I'm even doing it for work sometimes, volunteering, oh, pick me, I'll do that. Because like I said, there's just so much potential, and my camera's getting a little funky. See, I say, oh, filmmaking, and then it's I'm gonna blur out.
Your place looks nice.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, filmmaking technology for sure. There's this thing. I'm not really supposed to endorse any one particular brand or anything, but I'll just say it's when you're watching. What was that? Don't Fuck with Cats. Oh, can I say that on here?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. So the Netflix thing, Don't Fuck with Cats, where you could see the screen, and that was part of the film. So it's actually just looking at somebody's computer screen, right? And so I thought that was crazy interesting, something I've never even thought about before here. So yeah, but then I guess music, writing, production, God, I'm so old. What is it with the
turntables? The
turntables is what we're familiar with. That's the new turntables.
Whatever they're called now.
Whatever those are called. The new techno music making.
The wooka thing.
There's 3 letters. Somebody's gonna kill me. Somebody's gonna be like, who did you put on your show, Adrian?
I think everybody's gonna love this episode. they're gonna be they're gonna be sorry that they missed it live. You're gonna watch the replay and be like,
losers.
Yeah.
Just kidding, because you're watching it now.
Common technologies. When you think about how much they cost and how it differs from place to place and who can afford them and who doesn't, what can you kind of talk about? What can you talk about in that area? Because I know just from Puerto Rico, which is, again, a U.S. territory, they come over here to visit us, my family, and instead of doing family stuff, they want to go shopping because they can get a bunch of stuff for much cheaper than they could over there. And because technology is more expensive over there, different people can afford it than over here. Not everybody has an iPhone 12 in their pocket. So.
Right. Well, first, I'm just going to address the comment from Tom. It's not DAW, but maybe you're getting close. I want to say there's an X in there somewhere, but it'll come to me. Yes, you're 100% right. Like, people want you to.
This Tom guy knows what he's talking about.
He seems to. He might be onto something. It's gonna drive me crazy. And I'll figure it out. I'm gonna text you later and be like, "This is what it's."
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, please do. That thing that she was going on and on and on about. Yeah, people want to know, like, hey, can you order me an iPhone from the States? Maybe it's cheaper. Clothes, purses. Yeah, but I don't know if it is, though. Sometimes I see things here that are way cheaper, and I don't know how to tell people, like, spread the word. It's not cheaper in the States.
Yeah.
The shipping is crazy. Like, that's the thing that costs everybody money. Maybe it is cheaper in the States, but actually shipping it here, that's what's costing them an arm and a leg. So yeah, but I mean, here they have their iPhones. There's a shop called Technodome, which I guess you could compare to like a Best Buy. And I was in there just the other day because it was our anniversary. I bought my husband a drone. And
congratulations.
Thanks. But yeah, like, I walked in and I bought a drone. No big deal. It was just like in the States. Big screen TVs and appliances on the other side, like washers and dryers and stuff. So it's here. There's a pretty big like economic disparity, I guess you could say. So there's, you go up the highway, you could find Burberry, Louis Vuitton, really high-end shops. You go like Midway, you can find like Tommy Hilfiger. I don't know. I don't really do a lot of shopping, obviously, but there's like mid-range stores. But I would say that there's not a huge middle class. There's like a small upper class, and then small middle class, and then just kind of a really, really large low class. But I would also say most of them are living in villages. So even though Almaty and Nur Sultan are really highly populated, you got to think that this is the 9th largest country in the entire world. So there's lots of people living in villages who are perfectly happy, having the small shops that they have access to.
Yeah, right on. It's so interesting because it's all the same stuff. That's the stuff that I don't understand. If it's the same stuff, it costs the same to make. I know that there's different economies, but
right.
Like, it's so frustrating.
You really do start to see when you travel, like the inequalities in the world. Yeah, and you do. You're like, why? Why is there such a big gap between access from one country to the next? It really, yeah. But if you do a show on economics, maybe we'll talk then.
Oh boy. Let's see. Okay. And again, however much you can say, but the idea of governments using technology to track and or control citizens. So even if it's not necessarily a place that you've lived, if you're looking for gray area for stuff to talk about, but anything come to mind when it comes to that, governments using technology?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it's perspective, a lot of it's like what you know. You know, like if you're traveling through London, you're going to see cameras everywhere. CCTV. Yeah. And it's, you know, that like if you get mugged on the street, CCTV is there for you. That's what you hope it's there for you.
Every single like London-based detective story, the first thing they do is pull up CCTV.
Pull the CCTV.
And it's so effective that my novel taking place in the future, I couldn't not adapt CCTV into it. Like of course that's gonna just like get implemented everywhere, because why wouldn't you? You know, and it's always so interesting watching those detective stories based in London, because the criminals always have to think of a clever way to get around CCTV, you know?
Mm-hmm. You just spray paint it, right?
Yeah, but there's still the footage of you walking up to it and spray painting it. Like, how do you get around? So, like, there's different ways that they go about it. There's one on...
Clearly, you put on a Guy Fawkes mask, spray paint it.
Mask is the easy one. Yeah, there's one guy on Luther who he had this hood that had a light lighting it, like an LED light. So wherever he was, there was this bright light shining that was brighter than anything else around, and therefore the cameras are just picking up a giant like glow coming from him. His face never registered anywhere because of the glow of the light. So little things like that you can do.
That sounds really
I don't want to give anybody any criminal ideas in London.
No, yeah, don't. But I'm definitely going to have a nightmare about that or two.
Yeah, it was pretty creepy.
But my point is like you would see that here too, right? Mm-hmm. But because of the history, the location, the sentiment of the people towards the government, like they're just the opinions, not seen as something that's helpful to the people. It's seen as surveillance, you know. So it's like don't step out of the box, you know. When it was really, really heavily regulated here during the beginning of COVID, when it really started getting bad here, you know, like people were afraid to. Well, I mean, people were like legit getting arrested, you know, for leaving their house and doing things that they shouldn't be doing to prevent the spread of COVID. But people were like, oh, the video cameras are out there, you know. I guess in a way that is safety, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said before, you know, we border China, and Kazakhstan has an economic relationship with China. And I think in general, as we've seen in popular media, is that, you know, China and Russia can use their technology in ways to gather information about you. Was that like really popular app that like would turn you into a boy if you're a girl, or you know what I'm talking about? Or
like a filter on an app or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, this is what you would look like if you were a boy. This is what you would look like if you had purple hair. So it turns out it was like a Russian company that was gathering facial recognition data on everybody that used it, you know? Oh. So it's like, maybe you want to check who your apps are being made by.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot more aware of that since. Like, I don't buy products that I know are made that have like no U.S. components whatsoever.
Yeah. Interesting. Ooh. A little dark turn at the end there.
Yeah, and it's exactly. So you know of like the controversy about TikTok when that came out.
What was the controversy?
Well, because it was a Chinese company.
Oh,
you know, and it was like, course. Well, what are they? Yeah. So the question is just like something that can be really fun, and everybody that is addicted to social media is going to do these challenges of like, oh, look at me, this is me 10 years ago, hashtag 10 years ago. Well, great, and then you just gave somebody facial recognition and information about how your age progressed. So we don't realize how our information is being used.
Yeah. There's a trend going on right now on TikTok where there's a filter where it scans in your face and it morphs it into like your celebrity lookalike, and like for all we know,
Right.
it could be exactly like I
Right.
don't know.
You just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Bananas. Okay, so last and final question, Stephanie.
Aw.
Yeah.
Sad.
No,
I had fun.
it's been fun. Is there any particular place that you've lived that you feel has something magical about it? A certain unexplainable magical element. And if it's okay if your answer is no, but I'm very curious.
I think there's a magical element in every piece of where I've lived. So, no, I know that sounds like so cliche, right? But like, I think of Florida, I think of the beaches, and I think of Croatia, I think of Split, where I drank all those cappuccinos. And in Sweden, it's the archipelago. Like, it's just so gorgeous in the summer. And you can just walk from island to island. You just spend the day just strolling.
The
and
thing is really cool.
It's very cool, and it's, you've got
bridges connecting them.
The metro, is underground, so that's going through tunnels and stuff. And it's like the history is very rich because, they really, really hold their Viking history to high standards. And you can go see like the Vasa, which is this awesome ship. If you don't know about the Vasa, Google the Swedish Vasa Museum after this. It's kind of like the coolest and / funniest battle fail ever. But the ship was pulled up out of the ocean. It sank, I think, in like the 1600s. I might be off by that. But they pulled it out of the water, preserved, because the water was so cold.
Whoa.
And you can see the carvings and the symbolism and like the mythology stories that are carved into this. So, there's magical parts about everything. In Kabul, it was the mountains, hearing the call of prayer and just looking out over the Hindu Kush mountains. And here, it's really just how creative everybody is. And the magic is kind of in the people themselves. So, yeah, I take something away from everything. But, yeah. Hey, little ones.
Come here, buddy. Come here. Let's say hi to my friend. Come here. A friend.
Your friend?
This is Felix.
Hi. Hi, Felix. Oh.
Stephanie says hi. What's your name? What's your name?
Felix.
Can you go with Mama?
Great job.
Can you go with Mama?
Mine's also too. She loves looking at the screen.
Dada.
Dada. Dada.
Oh boy.
Oh.
All right.
All right, later. Go play Mary Poppins.
You gonna go with Mama? Go with Mama, buddy. Good boy. Go with Mama. All right. You were saying.
No, I think that was the end of my saying. There's magic everywhere.
That's what's up. I like it. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for being
Thank you for having me.
I know
this is a lot of fun.
But
Hey, I get it. You can make it a quick wrap up because I know
they're letting me know it's time to go.
Leaving the door very small window of time before this gets out of control.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on here. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like I'm seeing so many different ways to like apply this to my world building, and I hope that everybody at home followed along and feels the same. With these live events, I'll often have at least a couple of people in the chat like today, but there's a much bigger audience for it on the replay, which is why I put so much work into the animations and having a little bit of a presentation, so it's a little more, attractive to replay watchers. But but it's really nice to have you here live and to do it with you here. And this has been great. How long has it been since we saw each other in person? I can't remember the last time.
You didn't have Felix.
Yeah.
Merlin wasn't even pregnant with Felix.
No.
I've met Charlie. He was, I don't even think he was 1.
Yeah, so it's been at least 4 years.
Yeah.
It's been at least 4 years, maybe closer to 5. Wow. It's been a long time. So good to see you again.
So good to see you. Thanks.
Well. Say hi to the family. Give the little one a big hug. Tell her it's from Uncle Adrian.
I'll let him know. You, Adrian.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're going to close this out with our little outro and come back next Sunday. We're going to finish up world building. He's back. We're going to finish up world building with a roundtable discussion with like 5 other authors. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Look at his face. Look at him. He's a cutie. I made that. My wife, no, she helped. I'll give her 12% of the credit. But, I mean, I'm just a really good artist. I mean, look at this. Look at
that. I'm sure he loves that.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all next week.
All right.
Flash Fiction Contest. Don't forget, submit your stuff. Thanks again, Stephanie. Bye.
Bye.